Hazel Quinn hurried through the narrow streets toward La Belle Cuisine, her breath ragged from the unexpected sprint after the late train left her stranded. Sweat dampened her simple tank top, and her hair was hastily tied back in a loose ponytail, strands sticking to her forehead. She carried only a small bag slung over one shoulder, her outfit more suited to the gym than the polished interior she was about to enter. Her eyes flicked upward at the restaurant's glossy black door beneath the brass signage, a beacon of precision and luxury in the heart of the city. Inside, the air shifted instantly, gleaming counters, polished knives resting in neat rows, and chefs dressed impeccably in starched white jackets and black trousers, their movements synchronized like a well-rehearsed ballet. The hum of focused conversation and sizzling pans mingled with the faint scent of fresh herbs and seared meat. Staff and patrons alike exuded a confidence sharpened by years of maintaining the restaurant's elite reputation. Hazel's entrance did not go unnoticed. A few heads turned, their eyes scanning her informal attire and the faint sheen of perspiration on her skin. Whispered comments fluttered like shadows, something about her unpolished appearance and casual demeanor. She kept her gaze forward, steady but wary. From across the kitchen, Damon caught sight of her. His lips curled into a sneer as he sized her up, mistaking Hazel for some low-level kitchen help lost among the professionals. With a piercing voice that carried authority and disdain, he called out to her, "Hey, you. Yeah, the one looking like she's been dragging herself out of bed. Grab a mop, there's a spill near the prep station. We can't have the kitchen slipping on messes, can we?" Laughter bubbled from the nearby cooks, their amused yet cautious eyes fixed on Hazel, waiting to see how she'd respond to the public slight. Hazel's eyes lifted briefly to meet Damon's mocking gaze, but she didn't flinch. There was a calmness in her voice when she replied, right away, barely louder than a whisper. She took a step forward with the mop he'd barely glanced at, then turned sharply on her heel and walked toward the back offices, bypassing the prep station entirely. The murmur of laughter and surprised whispers followed her, but Hazel's pace didn't falter. Her steps echoed softly against the tiled floor as the polished kitchen buzzed around her, unaware they were witnessing the quiet confidence of their new executive chef. By the time Hazel reached the sleek glass door marked management, she took a deep breath to center herself and pushed it open. Inside, Miss Castelli, a poised woman in her early 50s with steady eyes and a warm smile, was waiting, seated behind an immaculate desk piled with documents and a laptop. The modest but inviting office was a stark contrast to the kitchen's clamorous energy. "Hazel, welcome," Ms. Castelli said, rising to greet her. Her voice was genuine, the warmth in it wrapping around Hazel like a protective shield. She extended her hand, which Hazel took firmly. "Thank you," Hazel replied, a mixture of relief and resolve threading her words. Ms. Castelli motioned to the chair opposite her. "I'm glad you're here. The team's been anticipating your arrival. We're ready for a change, especially with the holiday season around the corner." Hazel sank into the chair, wiping a small bead of sweat from her temple. "I appreciate the opportunity. I've studied the restaurant's reviews and menus extensively. There's so much potential here, but the energy felt a bit off today." Ms. Castelli nodded knowingly. "You'll find that some of the kitchen staff, especially Damon, have grown comfortable with their routines. It's been a challenge to motivate them toward the standards we aim for." Hazel's lips curved into a faint smile. Change always feels uncomfortable at first. That's why first impressions sometimes mislead. "I saw what happened out there," Ms. Castelli continued, leaning back. "Damon tried to assert control, I assume?" Hazel's nod was slight. "He assumed things, acted prematurely. It's not surprising." For a long moment, the two women exchanged looks, an unspoken understanding settling between them. Hazel's subtle demeanor hadn't diminished her presence. If anything, it amplified it in a way only the experienced could pull off. Meanwhile, back in the kitchen, Damon had already taken to recounting the incident to the junior cooking staff clustered near the ovens. His voice was loud, each word dripping with exaggerated bravado. "You should have seen it. This new girl walks in like she owns the place, but looks like she just stumbled in off the street. So I told her to grab a mop and clean up. Let's see how bossy she is now, huh?" A few younger chefs chuckled nervously, but not all found Damon's boast as amusing as he did. Mateo, a sous chef known for his quiet observation, exchanged a quick glance with Lynn, a pastry chef who shifted uneasily at the edge of the group. Both had heard enough murmurs about Hazel's background to suspect Damon might be in for a surprise. Damon puffed out his chest, confident that this display had cemented his position as the kitchen's unquestioned authority. But the atmosphere around him felt subtly different, a tension mingled with unease that he chose to ignore. Back in the office, Hazel and Ms. Castelli reviewed a thick folder containing staff evaluations, kitchen layouts, and supply lists. Hazel pointed to charts indicating inconsistent food preparation times and order errors that had cost the restaurant valuable reviews over the past months. "We'll need to streamline the workflow, introduce clearer communication, and foster accountability," Hazel said, voice steady and thoughtful. "But that begins with rebuilding respect among the team, starting with leadership." Ms. Castelli agreed. "It's more than just being executive chef. You're expected to inspire a team that's been a little complacent." Hazel's gaze sharpened. "I prefer leading through example and fairness, not fear." A soft knock at the door interrupted their conversation, and a junior staff member appeared briefly to mention the scheduled midday meeting. Hazel acknowledged it with a nod, rising to prepare. As she stepped back toward the kitchen, her demeanor was calm but purposeful, a far cry from the disheveled newcomer Damon had interrupted earlier. The scent of garlic and roasting herbs greeted her like a familiar tune, a reminder of why she loved the culinary world despite its challenges. She paused briefly by the mop Damon had left leaning against the wall. She glanced down at it but didn't touch it. This was not the role she had come to take on. Walking past the kitchen staff, Hazel noticed the whispers lingered but now carried a tentative respect. Small nods of recognition met her eyes from some, while others looked away, unsure how to process the shift. Hazel returned to Ms. Castelli's office to collect her chef's coat, freshly pressed and embroidered with the restaurant's emblem and her name beneath the title, Executive Chef. Slipping the jacket on, she straightened the collar with deliberate care. Her casual clothing remained underneath, an unspoken reminder of the morning's chaos, but the chef's coat transformed her presence instantly. No one here would mistake her for mere kitchen help now. As Hazel prepared to address the entire team at the scheduled meeting, she reflected briefly on the moments earlier, noting that sometimes the initial judgments told you more about the observers than the observed. Determined not to let the early missteps define her, Hazel stepped forward, ready to claim not just a title, but the respect she deserved. The hum of the restaurant's daily rhythm pulsed around her, alerts, orders, sizzling burners, a symphony in which she intended to be the conductor. The midday meeting was called promptly after the lunch rush began to die down. The entire kitchen brigade, the waitstaff, and a handful of front-of-house managers gathered into the narrow staff room adjacent to the kitchen. The room was modest, with white walls and a long wooden table strewn with clipped menus, handwritten notes, and a lingering aroma of espresso from the morning's breaks. As the staff shuffled in, conversations faded to murmurs. Most wore expressions of curiosity mixed with skepticism. Damon, as usual, was among the first to arrive, his demeanor cocky yet cautious, a wariness he tried to mask with a confident smile. Lynn stood quietly beside him. Mateo lingered near the back, his eyes curious but reserved. The clock ticked toward noon when Miss Castelli entered, signaling the start of the meeting. "Okay, everyone," she said firmly but warmly, thank you for gathering. I have an important announcement regarding our leadership here at La Belle Cuisine. The room quieted instantly, some shifting on their feet. The anticipation was palpable. With her characteristic calmness, Hazel Quinn stepped through the door behind Ms. Castelli, a crisp white chef's coat perfectly fitting her frame. Her hair was now tightly secured back, her demeanor nothing like the casual newcomer from that morning. She pulled a small stack of notes from her pocket and approached the front of the room. Ms. Castelli gestured to Hazel. "Everyone, please welcome Hazel Quinn, our new executive chef." Hazel comes to us with over 10 years of experience managing Michelin-starred kitchens in New York and abroad. Her reputation for transforming underperforming kitchens and her passion for culinary excellence are well known. We're thrilled to have her lead our team forward. Murmurs fluttered through the room. Damon's smile faltered. He shifted awkwardly, stealing a glance at Hazel, now standing with quiet authority. His initial disbelief tightened into visible discomfort. Hazel's calm eyes swept across the room. "Thank you, Ms. Castelli. And thank you all for being here today. I know some of you may have questions, and some first impressions might not have been the best. That's understandable. Today is about setting the tone for how we will move forward, together." The focus in the room sharpened immediately. Those who had chuckled earlier or whispered doubts now exchanged serious looks. Damon shifted again, throat tightening. No longer the cocky sous chef who'd ordered a stranger to mop floors, he now seemed small in the weight of her presence. Hazel continued. "I've spent this morning observing, listening, and engaging with Ms. Castelli. Our restaurant has extraordinary potential, and every one of you contributes to that. But between us, I notice tension and complacency that limit what we can achieve." She paused briefly, allowing the words to settle. "I don't expect perfection overnight. I expect effort, respect, and accountability. These are the pillars we will build on. We're going to establish clearer communication, refine processes, and ensure every plate leaving this kitchen reflects the quality La Belle Cuisine promises." Her tone was direct but fair, inviting cooperation rather than demanding obedience. The kitchen staff's posture straightened, whispers ceased. Even Damon's jaw clenched in reluctant acquiescence. Ms. Castelli added, "Hazel's leadership style is grounded in practicality and respect. She values how people behave when no one's watching, and how teams function when faced with pressure. That, I believe, will inspire real change." Hazel gave a small smile. "I arrived today straight from a workout. Yes, the clothes you saw me in this morning were not what I planned for my first impression. But it was intentional. I wanted to see the kitchen as it is, not as it might be when everyone's on their best behavior." A few eyebrows raised, surprise flickering across faces. The vulnerability of the admission, paired with her evident authority, disarmed many initial skeptics. "I believe leadership isn't about dressing the part but about cultivating values. I chose humility and practicality today because I wanted to observe how the team interacts when above appearances. How do you support each other? How do you handle unexpected challenges?" She glanced directly at Damon but quickly moved on, signaling no lingering grudges. "This kitchen will be a place for teamwork, trust, and pride in craft." Hazel's eyes glinted with subtle intensity. "I expect each person here to match my commitment." Several heads nodded, the group shifted from doubtful to cautiously optimistic. Damon, however, remained silent, his previous bravado melted into an uncomfortable quiet. "Let's start fresh," Hazel concluded. "I will be holding individual conversations over the next few days. Your feedback is valuable. And together, we'll make La Belle Cuisine the place everyone here can be proud to work." The meeting adjourned quietly, staff dispersing with conversations laced with curiosity and reflection. Damon retreated to a corner near the ovens, his face drawn tight as he replayed the moment he'd humiliated Hazel, only to realize she was the very person steering his path now. Mateo approached Hazel hesitantly. "Welcome aboard, chef. Looking forward to working with you." She smiled briefly, nodding. "Thank you, Mateo. I appreciate that." As the staff returned to their posts, the energy in the kitchen had clearly shifted. The heavy air of superiority and complacency was replaced by a tentative but earnest willingness to listen and adapt. Hazel lingered only briefly before heading back into the kitchen. She checked the mise en place, noted some irregularities in ingredient organization, and mentally began drafting a plan to reorganize the prep stations for maximum efficiency. She paused near the line where Damon stood, busy with a pan but clearly distracted. Their eyes met. For a moment, the tension hung between them like a fragile thread, neither speaking, both measuring the unspoken challenge. Hazel turned away, resolute. The road ahead demanded patience and firmness, but she was ready to lead the kitchen beyond its limits. The bustle of the restaurant resumed around her, the clatter of plates, the shouts of orders, the sizzling symphony of food cooking to perfection. Hazel stepped into the flow with quiet confidence, executive chef in every sense, no longer overlooked or underestimated. After the staff meeting dispersed, the atmosphere in La Belle Cuisine shifted noticeably, though a subtle undercurrent of tension remained. Hazel Quinn stood near the chef's table, her polished white coat catching the soft glow of the overhead lights. She was the picture of calm professionalism, her posture poised, her gaze steady. Despite the earlier scenes of casual dismissal, Hazel now embodied the leadership everyone was beginning to recognize. Ms. Castelli approached, her expression one of quiet approval. "Hazel, that was the right tone today. Firm, yet fair." Hazel nodded, brushing a stray lock of hair from her forehead. "Thank you." They needed to hear that. And see it. With a few deep breaths, Hazel prepared to speak again, a more detailed introduction to the culinary team, who filled the kitchen stations and prep areas. Tall stainless steel shelves were stacked with fresh vegetables, various meats glistened in cold trays, and the scent of herbs and stock simmered faintly in the air. The kitchen was alive and humming, a complex machine that required delicate tuning to operate at its peak. Hazel cleared her throat softly but with confidence. "For those I haven't met yet, I want to share a bit about where I come from and why I'm here." Heads shifted toward her. Damon stopped his rising tension for a beat, his eyes narrowing with interest. "I've spent over 10 years leading kitchens in several top restaurants," she continued. "Most recently in New York City, where I managed teams up to 50, overseeing everything from sourcing to menu design. My work has earned recognition from culinary guilds and critics, but beyond awards, my focus has always been on creating environments where chefs can thrive, collaborate, and innovate." Pausing to let the words settle, Hazel's tone softened ever so slightly. "I believe good leadership is humility in action. It's about showing respect to every person, no matter their role, because how people behave when no one expects an audience reveals true character." She surveyed the room, her gaze lingering briefly on Damon before moving along the rows of attentive faces. "My schedule got off to a rocky start this morning. I came straight from a workout, I'm training for a marathon, and the city's transit didn't make it easy. That's why I was dressed more casually than usual. Rather than hide behind appearances, I wanted to see the kitchen as it is." Hazel's voice carried the faintest smile, suggesting she bore no embarrassment, only intention. The unexpected honesty caught some off guard. Lynn exchanged a glance with Mateo, both nodding subtly. "I know dressing sharply means something around here," Hazel admitted, "but to me, it's the quality of work and respect for the craft that should define us." There was a pause, then a rising murmur of agreement echoed through the room. A few chefs, previously wary, showed signs of alignment with her values. Miss Castelli cleared her throat gently. Hazel has already begun analyzing our operations and will be implementing some changes soon. We ask for your cooperation and open minds during this transition. Hazel turned back to the team. Our priority will be clear communication across all levels. I expect us to work as a cohesive unit, to hold ourselves accountable, and to support each other through challenges. Her voice grew firm but inviting. This isn't about hierarchy or grand gestures, it's about trust, dignity, and pride in our work. I encourage each of you to bring your ideas forward so we can evolve as a team. Several chefs exchanged looks, a cautious but hopeful energy permeating the air. Damon's jaw tightened imperceptibly, but his hurried breath suggested resistance rather than acceptance. Hazel continued, I'm here not just to manage but to listen. I plan to meet with each person individually over the coming days. Be honest with me. As the day progressed, Hazel moved through the kitchen with a renewed sense of purpose. She inspected stations meticulously, noting areas where ingredients were misaligned or where timing could be optimized. Her movements were deliberate but approachable, offering quiet guidance without condescension. When a junior cook botched a garnish, Hazel knelt beside him and suggested a subtle adjustment rather than scolding. The young man's eyes brightened with relief and renewed determination. At one point, Damon intercepted Hazel near the dry storage, his face a mask of composure but his eyes sharp. Chef Quinn, he said with forced politeness. I assume you've reviewed the prep schedules I put together last week. I stand by their efficiency. Hazel looked up thoughtfully. I've studied them, Damon, but I've also noticed bottlenecks at lunchtime service. Changes will be inevitable to improve flow. He shifted, trying to maintain his authority. I hope you'll value the experience I have here. It's unfortunate that first impressions this morning caused confusion. Hazel regarded him steadily. Assumptions based on appearance are misleading, Damon. I'd like us to move beyond that. For a moment, Damon was silent. Then he gave a curt nod before walking away. Later, during a quieter moment, Hazel was joined by Lynn and Mateo, who expressed relief that the kitchen finally had a leader they could trust and respect. Hazel listened attentively, thanking them for their honesty and encouraging their continued candid feedback. That afternoon, Ms. Castelli stopped by, her face thoughtful. The staff are beginning to see it, your leadership is already shifting the kitchen's energy. Hazel smiled softly. It's only the start. There's more work ahead. As evening approached, the kitchen's tempo rose again. Hazel's clear instructions and steady presence seemed to calm the usual storm of dinner service. The plates came out on time, beautifully composed, and with a renewed sense of pride behind each dish. At the end of the shift, Hazel stood near the pass as the last orders were called out and the staff began cleaning. Damon approached her quietly, his expression subdued. Chef Quinn, he said simply. I underestimated you today. Hazel studied him for a moment. Acknowledging that is the first step. He nodded slowly, then added, I'm willing to learn. Hazel's face softened briefly. Good. That's what I want. Walking past the gleaming stainless steel and perfectly stacked knives, Hazel felt a deep satisfaction settle within her. The kitchen was more than just equipment and ingredients, it was a team, a living organism capable of strength and resilience. Her measured, humble approach was already setting a new standard, and she knew the real transformation was only beginning. The next morning at La Belle Cuisine, the kitchen staff arrived to an atmosphere charged with anticipation. The morning sun slanted through the tall windows, casting long streaks of light across stainless steel counters and polished utensils. It was a busy day, but beneath the usual flurry of activity, a sense of change hovered in the air. Hazel Quinn moved with practiced confidence, her presence drawing genuine smiles and nods from the previously wary cooks and servers. The first order of business was a discreet but serious meeting between Damon and Ms. Castelli, called immediately after the early prep session. Damon sat stiffly on the edge of a visitor's chair in the otherwise empty office, his hands clenched tightly in his lap. Ms. Castelli's tone was firm but not unkind. "Damon," she began, folding her hands on the desk, "your behavior yesterday was not appropriate for this kitchen, or our standards for leadership. Publicly belittling a colleague, especially one in a leadership role, cannot be tolerated." She paused, allowing her words to sink in. "Effective immediately, you are relieved of your duties as lead sous chef. This is a consequence of your actions and an opportunity for reflection." Damon's jaw tightened, a mixture of frustration and reluctant acceptance crossing his features. "I understand," he muttered. "I'll do what's needed." Miss Castelli's eyes softened slightly. "There will be a performance review and ongoing training focused on teamwork and communication. If you show commitment, there might be a path forward. But respect is non-negotiable." Meanwhile, word about Damon's demotion spread quickly through the kitchen. The staff, though surprised, found themselves reassessing their own attitudes. Mateo, once a silent observer, voiced support among the line cooks. Lynn, passing the word along to the waitstaff, noted the change in energy already palpable throughout the restaurant. At a mid-morning briefing, Hazel addressed the team again. "Today marks the beginning of a new chapter for us all. Change can be uncomfortable, but it opens space for growth. I expect everyone to contribute positively and to uphold the values we discussed: respect, accountability, and collaboration." She paused and let the gravity of her words resonate. "I am here not only to lead but to listen. I encourage open communication. If you see areas that need improvement or if you face challenges, bring them to me." The staff seemed receptive, exchanging glances and nodding. There was an undercurrent of hope that previous tensions would give way to a genuine sense of teamwork. As the lunch service began, Hazel scrutinized the kitchen's rhythm closely. Orders flowed smoothly, and staff worked in sync. Damon, no longer in a leadership role, focused on his station with visible humility, taking care to follow new procedural guidelines. Later, during a quiet moment, Hazel found Damon near the storage area. He looked up, meeting her gaze without the usual sharpness, instead revealing a hint of self-awareness. "Chef Quinn," he said simply. "I want to apologize for the way I treated you. I let my ego get in the way." Hazel regarded him for a moment before responding. "Thank you for saying that. It takes courage to admit mistakes." He shifted uncomfortably. "I hope I can regain your trust and the team's. I want to learn, not just to follow orders but to be part of the team." Hazel nodded, a faint smile touching her lips. "That attitude is a good start. Change requires patience and openness from all of us." Back on the line, the kitchen's newfound harmony was evident. Junior cooks who once hesitated to speak now offered suggestions, and servers complimented the atmosphere during busy shifts. Hazel's leadership was weaving through every facet of the restaurant. As the evening gathered, the restaurant filled with patrons eager for the refined dining experience La Belle Cuisine promised. Hazel stood quietly near the pass, watching plates go out punctually, beautifully crafted and brimming with the kitchen's renewed pride. Damon approached her one last time that day, the noise of the bustling kitchen swirling around them. He offered a brief, respectful nod, the first genuine acknowledgement of her position without defensiveness or bravado. Hazel returned his nod with a firm but polite smile. "Let's keep moving forward." With that subtle interaction, the unspoken tension between them eased, replaced by the fragile trust necessary for true teamwork. Walking through the kitchen after the final orders, Hazel observed the focused faces of her staff, now collaborators rather than competitors, and felt a quiet satisfaction. The restaurant was no longer just a place of prestige but a place where respect and dedication flourished. Her own journey had begun amid skepticism and misunderstanding, but she had carved her place with quiet resilience and unwavering professionalism. La Belle Cuisine was hers to lead, and she did so with both authority and grace.